please join me in welcoming Majid. Secondly, I'd like to welcome Simon Young. He's the General Manager of the Internet of Things at Cisco. His career has spanned about 25 years in this space, 15 of those at Cisco, so it must be a fantastic place to work. And he's very interested in energy and transportation, and if his face looks a little bit familiar, it's because you might have caught him playing electric guitar for a metal band back in the day. So I think that's where most people know you from, not from your Cisco career.
That's right. That's when I had long hair. I was a lot more recognisable back then, but a bit challenged these days.
Oh, not at all.
Was it Hush? No, it wasn't. Yeah, sorry about that.
And just a little about myself. My name is Jeanette Chia. I'm the co-founder of the Hacker Exchange. We have the privilege of working with young founders and entrepreneurs across Australia, mostly working with tertiary students and connecting them with global innovation cities such as San Francisco, Tel Aviv, Singapore and Melbourne. And yeah, it's my absolute pleasure to be hosting this conversation this morning. Gentlemen, would you like to start by just giving the audience a couple of minutes introduction about yourself and what you've been working on? So Majid, with you.
Sure, I'll use this. Majid Sarvi. Majid Sarvi, working for Melbourne University. Yeah, sure. And I'm by education a civil engineer, did my master and PhD in intelligent transport system. In Tokyo, Japan. Janet mentioned worked in industry for 5-6 years, so I've seen both of side of the fence, working for university and industry, and I'm very excited to be in Melbourne University, where we have very ambitious plan for future, and I'm very interested to see how this is going to pan out.
Okay, so yes, I've been in the IT industry almost 25 years, which is a long time. 15 years at Cisco, mainly in engineering consulting roles, but 3 years into Cisco, we looked at developing new business, and so I was part of a team that looked at how do we take our technology into the operational technology area. So if you're familiar with that, you've got IT, which is affectionately known as the carpeted space, and you've got OT, which is affectionately known as the concrete or the concreted space. And so I was involved in developing new business around there, particularly the utilities industry, taking our products and transforming them so they could disrupt those sort of industries. Through that, we started to work through something called sensor networks, and that was the precursor to the Internet of Things. So I was involved in establishing the Internet of Things business here in Australia, and again, developing the broader product set and solutions for that. Working through that, we also realised then that there was another industry that was being disrupted and going through some transformation, and that was the transport industry. So that's my recent project right now. It's around taking our IoT solutions and placing it into the transport industry and looking at how that disrupts that market as well.
Awesome, thank you. Now, in the audience, who has previously heard of the AIMS project? I'm going to go with about 50-50. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, so this is all fairly new for me because I've never done any work with sensors in the roads and in the streets. So my biggest question for the gentleman was, where are these sensors? It's a connected mesh all around the city tracking pedestrians, cars. Where are they? Where can we find them and what are they doing?
Sure, let me first explain physically where is AIMS located. It's just around the corner from here. So AIMS physically starts from Lygon Street, goes to Huddle, and Alexander Parade to Victoria Parade, plus Eastern Freeway. So put them together is about 100 kilometers of road network. So if you just go to the intersection next to you, you will see sensors hanging from the signal controls or some other poles. So they're all around the AIMS area. We have about 200 plus sensors now. Some of them sitting inside the VIC cabinets. Lots of credit to government and VIC allowing us to do this. So these sensors are not maybe very visible for you guys to see it, but if you follow me, I can show you after this, where they are.
Sounds like a massive project and something that, it's incredible to have this collaboration between industry and government and the University of Melbourne. How did it come about? Majid, as the founder and director of this program, how did you ideate that and get that up and running?
The whole idea was, Melbourne University is one of the top 30 universities in the world. We would like to be top 20 in engineering. And in transport, we even put a more aggressive and ambitious target for ourselves. We want to be top 5 in the world. And the best in Australia. The good news is we already the best in Australia and probably one of the top in the world. So mission accomplished. So in order to do that, we needed a groundbreaking project. So something that company like Cisco is happy to put money into it, and for that, that vision to come together is not a job of, just university. You need to have government and industry working together. As I mentioned, these sensors, we don't have Vicro to allow us to do what we do, we cannot do it. So in order to get to that common vision, we had lots of dialogue. So we started from talking rather than doing things. So we spent about a year collectively talking and basically finding a very same and common vision and agreeing on how we're going to do it. And then the good news is that because it's very collaborative, everybody, bringing what they can do in this ecosystem and seeing things from their own perspective. As Simon mentioned, for example, Cisco is a communication and networking company. They would like to do something in transport, and that's beautiful because they bring flavor that we wouldn't have otherwise. So this is one of our strengths, being able to work collaboratively and sharing the glory and basically the failure.
So that's a good point. One of the things that enticed Cisco to hopefully it wasn't just the money was to participate. Was we're not subject matter experts. We're not transport planners. We don't live and breathe transport. We're technology specialists, and so when we're building up new business, we need to partner to make sure that what we build is relevant and appropriate. And so there's lots of different test beds around the world. Lots of people are opening up their road and saying, build stuff, stick stuff in there and trial it. But what enticed us around the work that Majid did in the team was not just the raw assets. Yes, you get roads and you can put sensors up and there's vehicles, but the ecosystem, the partners and the willingness to work. Because if you look at the stuff that we do in other cities, sure, they give you the road, but it takes 12 months to get access to it, or it gives, a project takes 12 months because you have to get everyone aligned. What interested us, and I know the whole process probably took 12, maybe 24 months to work through, but the fact that all these people were coming together to work together for a collective goal of building something that could help enhance transport safety or efficiency as well.
An incredible achievement, but government and university and corporate working together and bringing that conversation to reality. And I mean, it's very entrepreneurial actually. Like we work with a lot of startups that create, certain solutions for an Internet of Things. What strikes me as slightly different with what you're doing with AIMS is that it's incredibly infrastructure based. It's not just about like trying to solve a very narrow problem. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to that as sort of being your basis of the whole project?
That comes from my story. Basically, came from my own journey. I started to work as a traffic flow engineer when you're very much focusing on, let's say, how car traffics can get more efficient, and then gradually, started to see that we only have one transport system, and unless you can work as a holistic solution, it's not going to be very effective. So that brought me to this understanding that we need to tackle this major problem in a very holistic way, which make it complex, but hopefully the achievement going to be also more important. So that was my angle, and then basically in order to bring it to reality, you need this ecosystem and working with industry and government, and also with hopefully entrepreneurs. From Melbourne University, our main objective is to create this ecosystem. We're focusing on, if you have this functionality, what are the beautiful projects you can build on the top of it. So, we're hoping that this data start flowing, and then, we have, many startups and, bright minds, come and use this data to do what they need to do. So the concept was a little bit close to a smartphone. If you have some similar analogy between a smartphone and transport system, if you make the transport system smart, then you can build application on the top of it, and that has been our objective so far.
Yeah, amazing. And Simon, what are some of these applications that you're seeing coming through?
Yeah, so just on that innovation, that is also key for Cisco. Again, we don't build the whole stack and the whole solution set. The way we see it is we're sort of the glue in the middle, and we take a number of different solutions and combine them together. So a good example of that, and I'm probably, dare I say, they're not really a startup anymore, but Coda Wireless was one of the early pioneers in this space around wireless communications between vehicles. So they call it V2X. They came out of Adelaide, and we saw very early on that they had something that was quite important to us. And so we invested in them. We put some money into them 5 years ago. We watched them mature. And then what was interesting was the timing was right, and we started to build out solutions in conjunction with this, which is what we trialed around AIMS. So that's important, and that's a key part of what we're doing here, building out the right, back to that ecosystem partner thing, supporting the innovation and startup community to build solutions that are, again, holistic and worthwhile.
And this is actually like a global leading project, from what I can understand, which is fantastic, like to put things on the map. But what are some of the trends we're actually seeing in other cities around the world? From a global perspective, where do we stand with this kind of project? What are other people doing?
I mean, transport is a very hot topic these days. There are many reasons for that. First of all, if you look at the economic value of transport systems, about 10% of GDP. Anywhere around the world. Then cities getting more populated. Australia is one of the most urbanized countries around the world. So people living in cities, doesn't matter developed or developing countries. So everybody deal with that. So lots of R&D and sort of resource going to transport. We've gone through this revolution. People talking about it. Autonomous car, and that put a spotlight when the big companies like Cisco, Apple. Google coming to this area means there's some serious business in this. So there's a lot of activity around the world happening. And when it comes to trials, lots of people started, as Simon mentioned, we have maybe around 50 at least testbed in the US alone. But majority of them are off the road, car focus. And I think that's very good, but it's just the beginning. We need to have, cities to be able to show that your technology, your solution works, is scalable, and you can do it in a meaningful way. So what we do is unique in that sense, is multimodal, is larger scale, but having said that, there are many activities around the world in transport system, emerging technology, lots of it in autonomous car, lots of it in mobility as service, probably you heard about it, and lots of it around when people start not having car, and they can basically, using transport as a utility. So a lot of
Could you just unpack mobility as a service a little bit for us, please?
Yeah, so mobility as service pretty much means that, like when you go and buy an insurance for your family, or you go buy some, utility, water or electricity for your household, you go and buy transport. So you don't own the car necessarily, but you have a transport solution available to you. For example, I subscribe $2,000 a month for my family. Could be 50 travel by taxi in it, 20 bus, 10 train, so on and so forth. But you only deal with one entity, and that is provided to you. So that's kind of concept that is behind it. Is very appealing concept, but it requires lots of ground work and things that we're doing. For example, in AIMS, it's kind of providing that platform for mobility as service to happen. Because the base of that is real-time data, and for having real-time data, you need to have a good understanding of transport system, and and that data comes from a platform that we're kind of building.
Yeah. So our view is mobility as a service is really an integrated transport system. So the idea there is people can innovate over the top in terms of how they take their journeys, but for intents and purposes, you sit there, you get your app, and you go, look, I want to go to school. And it automatically says, okay, well, your best way to get there is, hey, maybe it's a Lime bike, and then or a Lime scooter, take the train to here, take the bus in the last mile. It's all integrated together. And that lends itself well to the Internet of Things, because for us, it's around connectivity. So in real-time understanding where all your assets are, that helps with supply and demand. What are people looking for? What is available? It's about integrating data together, so all the systems know ahead of time what they need, and then it's behavioural change at the top. And so again, that's why all the work that we're doing is around IT, because we're trying to understand exactly what does the system look like, where are the supply available in real time, how many people are waiting at the bus stop, what's their wait time, do they choose to take a different form of transport because they've been waiting there over the threshold. All these sort of things start to play into what we're trying to do around tying it together.
And what I really love about this is it's kind of coming back to that livability of a city. It's coming back to a human experience, even with all this technology and data. It really comes back to how do we get humans from A to B in the most efficient way. And just speaking as a layperson, and please, audience, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're already starting to experience a lot of these things in little bite-sized chunks. Like Google tells me, how long was your wait at the tram stop? Or asks me that question, and then we see the maps with the red stuff, and then we get, I've got my Go-Get car and my Uber, and you're talking about something brought all together, which is a really kind of a cool experience. And does this mean that we're going to see, what changes do you think this is going to actually bring to the cityscape? Like, what's this going to change on our roads?
Well, first and foremost, hopefully it's safety. I mean, that's the main reason that we invest in that, is to improve safety. And so again, by understanding the risk profile, understanding that in real time should improve it. A lot of the work, and maybe we should talk about one of the projects we did at AIMS, was around understanding and getting insight around intersections. So right now you have black spots, and unfortunately that's where an accident has occurred or fatality. But imagine if you ahead of time could know that this intersection is of high risk. And so we're doing work again into that insight of understanding, okay, well, there's X number of near misses, there's so many pedestrians that almost got hit over a period of time, hence, maybe we need to do some remediation activity around that. So starting to see this automation appear, and that's some of the work that we're doing, that's some of the trials we did. And then the next step is how do we start to respond to that? So again, talking about technology such as V2X enables us to connect vehicles together, intersections, pedestrians, all of these start to talk and communicate as well.
What was that term you used, V to X?
V2X, yeah,
Yep.
So that's vehicle to something. You get vehicle V to V, which is vehicles talking to vehicles. You've got V to I, which is vehicles talking to infrastructure, which is intersections, traffic lights. So that's the key to a lot of these things. Again, it starts with connectivity. And it's basically wireless communications. And if you're not aware, it's actually quite interesting. What happens is the vehicles build these networks, wireless networks on their own. They're called ad hoc, and they share lots of data between each other. They share information about where that vehicle is located, the heading, the velocity, even some interesting things like, does it have its wiper blades on? Is it putting on its traction control? And so collectively, we're basically turning all these vehicles into sensors, and all together they build a better insight into what's going on. Some of the work we've done is around how do we enhance existing autonomous vehicles. So today there's lots of vehicles and they've got lots and lots of sensors on it, and they're only as good as what they can see, but they still can't see around corners or buildings and bushes and so on. And so what we're showing through the AIMS project that we did was that we can enhance that by having intersections that can build a broader view around it. They can start to share that information, go, you know what, I can see another vehicle around the corner. You might not be able to, but I'm going to send you a message and say, hey, watch out. Or there's a pedestrian walking across, watch out.
Cool, V to X. All right, so I've learnt MaaS, so MAAS, as a service.
Yes.
And mobility as a service, and a V to X. I'm going to have great dinner party conversation. Watch out, my friends and family. Cool. So we recently saw AIMS at the Melbourne Knowledge Week exhibition, which was fantastic, and I think that's a really nice way of engaging the community in a project like this. But I mean, speaking as a person who just walks down the street, sometimes I feel like these things are just going to pop out of nowhere in terms of a new innovation in my city. What other things are happening that we might not be aware of as the community? What other projects are in development, and what should we be maybe looking out for?
I think one of the major development in this field, as Simon mentioned, is connectivity that allows information sharing amongst vehicles, people, infrastructure. That's the key. For example, if you look at Melbourne or Sydney, cities transport system built, over many years, 1970, 1980. So the challenge is you cannot get rid of it. So you cannot pull out all the signal control we have in the city, throw it to the bin, and bring a new one. It's impossible. There's lots of investment, and also, it's not something you can do overnight. So the whole idea is how to augment it to something new. So there's lots of discussion and R&D is happening to make that connectivity possible. Because connectivity for transport is very different from your mobile talk to another person. So it's different requirements. Talking about safety, a car talking to another car or talking to a bicycle, talking to a signal control requires much more tighter sort of communication protocol, safer and all of that. So you need to, for example, upgrade the existing system to be able to do that. So lots of things like that is happening that you may not see it, but going to provide amazing functionality to the transport system. And also the second thing is autonomous vehicle. There's a big race between different entities to make that happen. And to a school of thoughts, some people hate it, some people like it. The reality is going to be here, is already here. We have one of them, by the way, in the university. One of the earlier sort of prototype of autonomous vehicle that we use it for research. So autonomous vehicle, I think for a country like Australia, which is very sparse, big, we have very low density sort of city. You're going to provide massive opportunity, especially if you use it in a coordinated way with connectivity. It can create lots of opportunity for everybody. So this is the thing that you probably need to look for to come in.
So with that race of the autonomous vehicles, who would you bet on? Who's going to win?
Probably, major car manufacturers. They already have a different type of it. Depends to who you talk to and who you believe to. A lot of them already have some sort of this autonomous vehicle. Even some of them you can already buy. But the functionality of those vehicles going to improve over time, and that's something that requires a little bit more, integration also with other systems.
I think you actually see it's a race between the consumer automated vehicle and public transport, and I think public transport's going to win. You already see it in trains and railways. That's probably going to be the area that's going to make the most difference.
Sydney launched their autonomous
Sydney's
train
been
last week.
The mining industry have been doing it for a while. Actually, we've been working with the mining industry on that before it came out here. But private enterprise, mining industry, autonomous haul trucks, that they've been working like that for ages. And so I think we'll start to see that in the public transport system first, more sort of shuttle-based sort of stuff. Than the fully autonomous vehicles. I think one thing to consider around autonomous vehicles, and that's everyone sort of goes to that because it's really interesting and it's fascinating, but that's still some time away, and there's various steps to get to that, and that's why we're talking about connectivity, because connectivity can happen right now. You can stick something into a vehicle right now and get that connectivity going and improve the visibility, insight, and improve safety right now. So we sort of, yes, autonomy sort of interests everyone, and it's great and it's amazing, but there's some steps that we need to do to get there, and we can take that right now. So we're sort of advocating that, right, autonomous is good, do some trials, but really we should start to push out some capabilities now around connecting vehicles around that.
I'd also like to add to what Simon says, very true, but the good thing about autonomous vehicle, put a spotlight, make transport very sexy. That without it, we wouldn't have
words I never thought I'd hear over breakfast.
So I think that was a fantastic thing happening to transport, because before that, everybody imagined transport as a greasy black, stuff, and a train and all of that. Nobody's interested in it, but now everybody's interested in it because of autonomous vehicle, and I think that was great because, as I mentioned, brought the attention back. We just need to make sure that it's in the right channel, and if it's in the right channel, like what we're talking here today, connectivity and all of that could be great achievement. And I think that's an important point.
Yeah, absolutely right. The vision is important. We need to get the community there, the vision, but also the steps to get there are equally as well.
Actually, speaking of that vision, and I think one of the things that we often work with founders and entrepreneurs and technologists is the storytelling for the audience and the community and the customer is almost as, not the same importance, but it's pretty important in terms of getting something across the line. What kind of role do you think things like Melbourne Uni and Cisco and Melbourne Connect can play in helping that storytelling aspect of, smart vehicles and connectivity, as well as the future of what it might look like? How would you do that?
Well, going back to Melbourne Knowledge Week, I mean, that's what was important around it. It's making it tangible. It wasn't just about, hey, everyone, there's a vehicle that can drive itself, but the fact that the community could get onto it and experience it and ask questions is great, because when we do a lot of these things, we're collecting data, we're doing funky stuff, people don't understand what the outcome is. And so by letting the community know what the outcome is in terms of what we're doing helps drive it and benefits everyone. So, one of the key things, again, is AIMS enables us to engage the community. They can feel aware and be part of this, and it's part of driving awareness around the benefits of what we're investing in.
Cool. Now, given I've got a couple of intelligent people here who have been thinking about transport for a really long time, can I get you to cast your minds 10, 15 years in the future and describe to me the things that we're going to be seeing and your vision of what a day-to-day life in transport will be in 10 years' time?
I need to take you back a bit to where I started. I remember year 2000, I was still a PhD student in Japan, and then they had this project called Autonomous Highway between Tokyo and Nagoya, 400 kilometers. So you can imagine this kind of concept. It's been around for a long, long time. And they, by the way, built it. So, but it was different technology than what we're talking about today. So there was lots of discussion even then that, where this going to go. Didn't happen in a larger scale. One of the reasons the society was not ready back then, not because the technology was not available, even if the technology has changed a lot. But I think now we are in the right moment. So I see in the next 10, 15 years, hopefully, depends also to the willing of the governments, how they're going to take this forward. As Simon mentioned, connectivity is here today. So if we implement it, we could improve the transport system in a very meaningful way. We could make it much more efficient. And also we could pave the way for autonomous vehicle when it is here. And I'm sure in the next 10, 15 years, you see lots of autonomous things moving around the city. You heard about, the US, they trialing trucks that moving on freeways for US Post, delivering things. You heard about Amazon getting a delivery by drone approved in USA. So we're going to be seeing lots of things like that. And basically, that's going to affecting the livability of cities and the amazing opportunity for, as I mentioned, countries like Australia when we have distance and we need to somehow cover lots of distance.
Boeing Max, yes. Well, that's a good point. I mean, what I see is a dynamic, on-demand, elastic system, and there's this natural evolution, and going back to the Boeing thing, that we're starting to see, right? There's connectivity, there's data, and then there's intelligence. So AI plays a key role in that. And so we'll start to see AI start to play a much more broader role in what we do, and maybe it would have helped with the Boeing stuff. I'm not quite sure, but the point is we need to get the first two phases done, and then AI will start to play that role of creating that dynamic, on-demand, elastic, fully integrated transport system.
And I'm looking forward personally to a situation where the vehicles that we travel in become. They're not actually, their primary purpose is not actually the transport. The primary purpose could become a place to work or a place to meet or a place to sleep. And I feel like the actual shell of the vehicle is going to change purpose, but that's just my personal view. Okay, so if people in the audience would like to learn more and engage more with this kind of thing, where should they go? What kind of podcasts? What should they read? Who should they engage with? Where do they go for more of this?
When it comes to AIMS, we have a fantastic webpage. You can have a look at it. By the way, we have also very good LinkedIn, so we can get, stay in touch with what we do. And the good thing about them is lots of it is you can see is physical stuff. You can basically, you can tangibly see some impact. Basically, if you want to look at outside AIMS, what is happening around the globe in terms of transport technology, I think there's no day that you not seeing anything on news about some innovation happening in this domain. So I think you just need to check your Facebook probably.
So we're all becoming Facebook friends with Majid after this. Awesome. Yep.
Yeah. Look. To play off what Majid said. Look, there's lots of projects we're working on right now. They'll start to bear some fruit in the next few months. So if you follow Majid and look at the AIMS webpage, you'll start to see more details around what we're doing and the output of those sort of things.
Okay, I'm going to pause and actually throw to the room. I'm sure there's plenty of questions out there. Did you want to take mine? Yep. Got one at the front, one at the back. Sir?
So, hello, Patrick's my name. Which other global cities, say in Asia and Europe, are considered leaders in this? And how is Melbourne different? I've got two questions.
I'll give it a go. Melbourne, so definitely that's the answer. We are the global leader in a holistic way. So, and that's not a joke. Seriously, is what we're doing. You know, as Simon mentioned, there are many things. For example, you go to Korea, go to Japan. They're doing things, but it's not as scalable as what we do here. It's not a big part of the city, and it's not multimodal and comprehensive, and it's not collaborative like what you see. For example, you see Toshiba doing something, or Samsung doing something, but you don't see Cisco working with Ericsson, working with Telstra, working with Vic-Road, working with 50 other partners. So in that comprehensive way, we are the best. We are the first. What we're doing, but having said that, as I mentioned, because of close to $1 trillion of business opportunity, every country that would like to be, something in technology, they're working in this area. So I'm everywhere, pretty much everywhere.
My second question is, can I book a time with you to walk me to the sensors afterwards?
So walking tour around Melbourne. Gary's coming up the back with the microphone. Then we've got a couple more down the side. All right.
Sure.
I actually want to ask for some comments. Actually, I grew up in Hong Kong. I settled here 25 years ago. And then what I know that in Hong Kong, the system had very good reputation. I enjoy the system there, like the train, the underground train, and also light rail around the countryside, and never seems to have a big problem. But in Melbourne, for so many years, often the train track have problem under very hot weather, and there are a lot of hazards going on. So I'm interested to get your comment. You are supposed to be expert in the field. What do you think of the Hong Kong system? Do you think there is something that can inform the other parts of the world? I've know a senior Australian. He told me his brother was the chief constructor of the system in Hong Kong, the train
so
system.
what can Melbourne learn from Hong Kong, and what learnings can we take from
What are your comments?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Any thoughts, Simon?
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying the Hong Kong transport system. The interesting thing is, so I'm not a transport expert, as I said before, but I am a technology expert, and I know the people from Hong Kong, I think it's MRT, actually have come to Australia to see what we're doing in terms of using technology to improve the way that their system works. And so simple things like, and I'll put my IoT hat on, is around using sensors to detect the heat. Right now on the tracks over there, they rely on I don't know who they have, the Bureau of Meteorology anyway, to detect when it's hot. When it's hot, they have to slow the trains down, and that causes problems. So what they're looking at is technology in Australia to put sensors on the track so we can determine in real time and go, you know what, it's not that hot. The weather might be hot, but the tracks aren't hot. We can run it a bit longer. So we're using technology here that they're using over there now, or they're looking at using over there to improve the way their system works.
Yeah, I also add, I lived in Hong Kong, by the way, so it's a great city, a fantastic transport system, but the big difference is that the density in Hong Kong is massive. So if you put that density to Melbourne, we could do better than that. So, I mean, the challenge is in Melbourne, you have people living, 50 kilometers from the city, they want to come here to work. So we have very low density country. So like same as Singapore, it's a small place with lots of people living in it. So the efficiency and the cost of building efficiency is minimal. So for example, I think Hong Kong is one of the few countries in the world that public transport make money. Here, everywhere else, you have to subsidize public transport because you don't have the demand. So there's a big difference between the two countries.
Hello, I'm Rebecca from the Uni of Melbourne. I'm just wondering how, with all the enthusiasm of industry to get this up and going with autonomous vehicles as an example, how do you harness that enthusiasm without letting it run away and have meaningful input to make sure that it benefits everyone and not just the commercialism of the company? Does that make sense?
Sort of.
How do you provide the expertise around what the future potential is for autonomous vehicles and the biggest benefits it can have, as opposed to just who gets there first?
Social impact versus bottom line. Thoughts?
Look, again, it comes back down to engagement. It comes back down to, while these early stages are around feasibility and looking at how this interacts and learnings from that, it's around engagement in the process later on and getting input into that. That's really probably the way forward we see.
Yeah, and I also like to add that it's similar to any other technology, let's say, go back 10, 12 years ago, people developing a smartphone. So you couldn't really stay there and say what gonna be benefit of a smartphone, because there might be some negative impact, that you could imagine back then. So the project, like what we're doing, is allowing the government to develop policies to make sure that the benefit comes first. And I think that's it's like a chicken and egg. Without doing it, you wouldn't know how to do it, and without being able to tangibly see it, it's very difficult to develop policy around it. So it's kind of like you need to do trials. You need to also think a bit outside the box, and similar to any other technology, there are lots of plus and minus in autonomous vehicle, and I think the picture is quite clear. Where are the possibility that you can provide social impact, and what are the things that you could do that the autonomous vehicle is going to be not only not helping, also contributing to more problems. So the challenge here is that which side of the fence we would like to be sort of sitting.
I would love to do a whole panel on this, on the ethics of, looking at big tech and the don't be evil mantras, and how do we make those decisions around.
Actually, I might address that another way. And this is why MAS is so important. Why are we seeing an improvement in services? Because there's disruption going across the top. You look at the way Uber does this. You look at, there's no lift here, but there's plenty of people doing that. And back to the question around how do we improve the how you enjoy transport. So this is why MAS is important, because what it's producing is it's virtualizing the transport layer. It's saying, I'm going to give you choices, and I'm going to produce data that enables other people to innovate. Back to your question around innovation on the top. So the innovators at the top sit there and go, I don't have to worry about my assets. I don't have to worry about taking care of them, making sure they're on time. All I have to worry about is the experience I give the patron. And so what they're saying then is by doing this work where we free up the bottom layer, we know where the supply and demand is, we free up the data and then just pump it northbound, then other people can innovate over the top and build other services that collectively build a better experience for those.
Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, I think. So Sarah up the back.
You've spoken a fair bit about how these innovations are going to help create a more safe and efficient transport system. I was wondering if you had thoughts about how AIMS might help in creating a more environmentally sustainable, less carbon-intensive transport sector.
Actually, we're doing that. Somehow we have environmental sensors in AIMS. They're getting more and more. And the whole idea is, that you can filter the cars or the whole transport system when the emission goes, to a certain level, so you can manage the transport in a more sustainable way. That Simon can talk about it. They're also Cisco running some project, or they would like to run some project with, companies like Scania, when they can, change the level of emission when they come to places that basically, the emission is more than a certain level.
Yeah. Yep. Going back to that same model, connectivity, data, intelligence, what we're doing is we're working with the likes of Scania, so that when they have their hybrid vehicles, we can actually send signals to the vehicle and say, you're in a location that might be environmentally sensitive, hence move from diesel to battery electric mode. So again, it's back to connectivity, understanding a set of policies, and then driving that back down to the vehicle so that they can manage it themselves.
So the kind of mental model I've got is you can manage mobility through kind of infrastructure, technology, but also you haven't really touched much on behavioural change. So based on Melbourne's kind of sprawl, we have a very car-intensive city. the kind of way to solve that is public transport. We're actually pushing towards a more individualised approach. So Uber, mobility as service, is pushing. The data out of New York and London suggests that Uber actually cannibalises public transport. The lady's comment around trusting corporates. We're already seeing Uber drivers gaming the system, so we're asking the public to put their faith in corporates to offer mobility as a service fairly. I have some scepticism about that. Is it actually possible to do this on an individualised basis, or should we just massively invest in public transport?
I mean, the very valid point you mentioned, all of them valid. Mobility as service, the backbone is public transport, to be honest. Not individual drivers, driving around the city. You're absolutely right, Uber eating the lunch of public transport, in many cities. However, having said that, if you look at Melbourne, for example, I live in Doncaster East. If I want to live there, there is no way that, just one example, we can have public transport to all the suburbs in Melbourne, because it's not possible, because it's very expensive, right? So there's two choices. I should live closer to the city, or basically, we need to do something more innovative. That's the nature of our cities. We have people that would like to live in, big land, and basically, they would like to live like Hong Kong in a small apartment. So we need to also acknowledge that is some reality of our cities. So in that sense, if you have good public transport and good feeders like first mile, last mile, electric, autonomous shuttle, we can imagine you can improve the efficiency of transport system without basically, increasing the number of individual drivers, driving in the system. So I think if you're realistically looking at possibilities in this sort of context, again, the massive opportunity if we do it right. But you're absolutely right. If we don't have a coordination, we don't have a good understanding of integrated transport system, and leave it to just the market to figure it out, you may not end up to coming out very successful. So definitely that's the role of government, and also the importance of possibilities being pan out to the future by collaboration between government, industry, and university. So this is exactly what we're trying to do.
Last question.
Thank you, Bill Wood. It sounds like AIMS is quite an investment, a lot of infrastructure there, a lot of data presumably coming out of that. There's been a little bit of discussion around this, but it sounds like the real challenge is translating all of that into tangible outcomes, and I'm really interested to know, specific to AIMS, about how you're going about facilitating innovation around that data and bringing, partners in, bringing innovators, entrepreneurs in to actually, translate that into real outcomes, and I guess have this test bed stand out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's very good sort of point. Is easy. Once you have the data to make it available to many entrepreneurs and people like to things we were working on at the beginning was that if you have a large system like what we have, how you can efficiently get all of this data to come to one location in a scalable way. I think Simon can talk about it. It's not quite easy and a very comprehensive sort of practice. But we have companies, for example, like Cubic, that are based in Sydney. They're doing smart ticketing. So they're taking that data and trying to develop, sophisticated multimodal transport management algorithm with the help of Melbourne University, to develop those things for them. But also, the more data we start getting from AIMS, we're not yet in that final stage that we would like to be. We would like to give the data to anybody who is interested to do something with the data. So we already have few startups working with us, very selective because we cannot do more with what we have at this stage. But the idea is once we have more data, this data be available to public, and they can use it for different sort of variety of applications.
Data as a public service, I like that.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think we're pretty much at time, and I know that people probably need to get off to work. I just want to say, I mean, from my perspective, I've learned a lot today. We're going connectivity, data intelligence. I think that we could do a really long discussion about the ethics of this kind of stuff, as well as the fact that, you know, we look at current platforms like Facebook and how long it's taken government regulation to catch up with that kind of technology. I wonder if we can learn things from those mistakes and sort of look at government working together with industry and research from the get-go. So really quickly, I just noticed that we never once mentioned hoverboards, which I'm very disappointed about. But thank goodness we have amazing minds. We're working on it. No, sorry. Could you please join? All right, you heard it here first. Cisco is working on hoverboards. Put that in the press release. No. So can you please join me in thanking Simon and Majid for their time this morning?